Welcome to today's commerce class. My name is Emmanuel Wido. In today's class, we are looking at the theme Trade and Business Organizations and the topic Sole Proprietorship. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the meaning of sole proprietorship, list sources of capital for sole proprietorship, and lastly, state the advantages and disadvantages of sole proprietorship. In a bid to encourage self-development and self-employment, government and other agencies usually do provide loans and grants. One of the businesses that enjoys these loans and grants is one known as sole proprietorship. Although this form of business has numerous advantages, one of its demerits is that the death of the sole proprietor may actually lead to the shutting down or closure of this business enterprise. Before we proceed looking at what makes sole proprietorship better than other forms of businesses, let's get to understand who a sole proprietor is by taking the definition of sole proprietorship. What does sole proprietorship actually mean? The word sole is derived from the Latin word solus, which generally refers to an individual or entity who works alone without interference or assistance. Proprietorship, on the other hand, is defined as someone who has a legal right or exclusive title to anything. In this case, we are looking at business. Therefore, sole proprietorship, also known as sole trading or a one-man business, is a business enterprise owned, financed, and managed by a single individual. So this is one person having a business, he is the one managing it, and he is the only one financing the business. In a sole proprietorship business, key decisions are taken by the owner of the business alone. Now hear this. This form of business is easy to establish and the law does not require it to be registered. However, in Nigeria, the law demands that you at least register the business name and the premises. So when you want to establish your business as a sole proprietor, you should be able to at least register the name of the business and the premises you're actually going to be running this business from. The cost is actually minimal when compared to the registering of other forms of businesses. Let's go further to look at the features of sole proprietorship. How do you identify? What are the characteristics that you could see and you say, okay, this is a sole proprietorship form of business? The first of them is that the source of income is directly from the purse of the business owner. So when you see a business that is managed and run by an individual who finances that business alone, if the business needs to get more stock into the shop, the man has to dip his hand into his pocket and do the shopping. He's not getting money from anywhere, no partner. The money is coming from his personal purse. Secondly, there is no separation between the owner of the business. As such, the debt incurred by the sole proprietor is that of the sole proprietor alone. So since he is the only one managing, controlling, and financing the business, if he's owing anybody, it is his responsibility to pay. He cannot be owing someone and his brother will come and pay. It is not his brother's business. It is his own personal business. So he has to look for resources to pay for his debt. Thirdly, autonomy in decision making makes it easy for the business owner to take business decisions quickly. Since he's the only one staying in the shop, Milo has finished, milk has finished. But because customers demand more of milk than Milo, he may decide to go to the market and buy just milk and leave Milo. Nobody is going to question him. Why? He has sat down and thought of it. My customers demand more of milk and less of Milo. So it is wise for me as a businessman to buy milk and leave Milo. When he takes that decision on his own, nobody has the right to question him because he is the only one running, managing, and financing his business. The fourth feature is that as a one-man business, the death of the owner may result to the shutting down of the business. Papa Okonkwo wakes up every morning. He opens his shop. One day, Papa Okonkwo is no more. And because his children do not buy into his kind of business, they don't bother looking towards that shop anymore. Probably one of them is a medical doctor. Is he going to leave his medical field to run his father's business? Absolutely no. So the shop automatically becomes closed because Papa Okonkwo is no more alive. And lastly for this class, it is the simplest form of business to establish because it doesn't require any legal responsibility. You're not going to the court to swear any affidavit. You're not looking for a lawyer to sign any memorandum of understanding between partners. It's your own personal business. The only thing you just have to do is maybe go to the Corporate Affairs Commission, CAC, and register the name and the premises of the business. That's all. So you can see how easy it is to form this kind of business. The image just tells us what I have explained in simpler terms. This is the sole proprietor. He engages in single ownership. Secondly, no sharing of profit or loss. One man's capital. We already said it. He only finances the business. Unlimited liability. Less legal formalities. Doesn't need a lawyer to form his business. He's not doing the business with anyone. And then lastly, one man control. He decides when to open his shop and when to lock it. Going further, what are the sources of capital for sole proprietorship? I told you that he alone manages it. He alone funds it. So where can he get his funds from? The first of them is personal savings. Secondly, we have monetary gifts and loans from family and friends. We also have trade credits. We have loans and overdrafts from banks. And then lastly, we have grants and loans from government. Now let's look at personal savings. Here we are looking at the sole proprietor using his personal income. Let's say he is a worker and he earns salary. From the salary, he decides to maybe open a small shop close to his house. His personal income then becomes his salary. So he's using his salary to run the business. That's what personal savings talks about. Monetary gifts and loans from family members. Here, Mr. Okonkwo has family members and friends. He may decide to visit them one day and they see the potentials in his business. And they say, okay, Mr. Okonkwo, I have seen how industrious you are. Take 50,000 naira and support your business. In this case, it is a gift. So he decides whether he's going to use it to support the business or not. He's not refunding the 50,000 naira. It could also come in form of loan. He might go to meet maybe an uncle of his or an auntie of his and say, I need to expand my business. Can you please assist me with a sum of 100,000 naira? Within 2 or 3 months, I'll pay you back. He knows he is now owing someone in the family a sum of money he collected as loan to expand his business. So that's monetary gifts and loans from family members explained. Now we also have trade credit. Here, Mr. Okon goes to the market. He wants to buy his milk since he prefers milk over Milo. But he doesn't have the money to pay the wholesaler. So he strikes a deal with the wholesaler. Oga, please give me milk at certain quantity. After 2 weeks, I will pay you back. Now, this is Mr. Okonkwo collecting goods on credit with the hope that when he sells this milk, he will refund the money back to the wholesaler. So that's trade credit. Overdrafts from banks. Mr. Okon is a regular customer of a bank. They know that at a certain month, certain amount of income comes into Mr. Okon's account. But at the moment, Mr. Okon's account is red. So what does Mr. Okon do? He walks into the bank. He probably meets the bank manager. Sir, you know that at the end of the month, my salary comes in. Please, I need a certain amount of money to fund my business. Don't forget, at this point, Mr. Okon's bank account is 0 naira, but he is expecting money at the end of the month. And the money he's expecting is equivalent to what he wants to take, or greater than what he wants to take from the bank as an overdraft. So an overdraft in this case is the ability of a customer to actually withdraw money from his bank account when his account is 0 naira, in a bid that when an income comes into the account, the bank will debit his account for the money so given. So by doing so, the bank, knowing that there is a regular source of income coming into Mr. Okonkwo's account, can actually give Mr. Okonkwo an overdraft where he gets to withdraw the amount of money he would have withdrawn if there was actually money in his account. That's bank overdraft for you. And then let's look at grants and loans from government. Here the government comes in with a brilliant idea that for all the sole proprietors in town, they want to support their businesses. So they come up with a form, you fill, they give you 100,000 naira. Now, when it is a grant, it means that the government is actually giving it to you without you paying back. This is the government trying to help you grow your business. So they are giving you a grant, you're not paying it back. But when it is a loan, it means that the government is helping you establish your business by giving you a certain amount of money, which you will have to pay back at an agreed time. So this is the government giving you a loan of 100,000 naira. They are monitoring how the business is going, and gradually they are deducting the amount from your salary or your account based on how productive and how profitable your business has become. Let's go further by looking at the advantages of sole proprietorship. The first of them is that the owner has complete control of the entire business, and this makes decision making quick and easy. Secondly, the financial records kept by the sole proprietor, if any, is for his personal use and not for the use of the public. Thirdly, the profit from the business is owned by the sole proprietor alone. Furthermore, it gives the owner a sense of satisfaction and achievement as a boss. Lastly, for this class, the capital needed for the establishment of this type of business is usually small when compared to other forms of businesses. What are the disadvantages of sole proprietorship? The first of them is that the unlimited liability associated with sole proprietorship means that if the business suffers any form of loss, it can wipe out the personal wealth of the owner. Furthermore, as a one-man business, the sole proprietor has a limited source of income to fund his business. Furthermore, the sole proprietorship form of business is limited to the managerial abilities of the owner. If the owner is a bad manager, it means the business will also suffer in terms of management. If the owner of the business cannot calculate properly, he will be making accounting errors every day. Furthermore, the life cycle of a sole proprietorship depends on how healthy the owner of the business is. If Mr. Okonkwo is down in health, it means for the number of days he's down in health, the business remains closed. The success of the business is largely dependent on the technological skills of the sole proprietor. If he's a man who has shut himself from technology, Mr. Okonkwo, even when he has a computer, still feels that he needs to write down all his digits and calculate them manually. It means that he will be wasting time calculating how much he should give to his customers after every business transaction when he has a calculator close to him. So you see how his inability to get technological skills can hinder the growth of his business. And lastly, for this class, taxes and levies charged by government is a function of the profit made by the business. So if Mr. Okonkwo makes a profit of 200,000, he is paying tax from the 200,000 naira he has made as profit. So you see how he could pay more tax than even those in a partnership form of business, which we will be talking about in our next class. Having said all this, let's take a quick summary of what we have learned in our class today. I told you that sole proprietorship is a business enterprise owned, financed, and managed by an individual. We also learned that an individual who owns, manages, and finances a business single-handedly is referred to as a sole proprietor. Next, we learned that one of the features of sole proprietorship is that the death of the owner may result to the shutting down of the business. We also learned that some of the sources of capital for the establishment of sole proprietorship are personal savings, loans from friends, and trade credit, among others. Furthermore, we learned that some of the advantages of sole proprietorship includes low capital for establishment and quick decision-making process. And lastly, we learned that some of the advantages of sole proprietorship are the owner bears all the losses and risk, and then there is limited managerial abilities. At this point, I would like to know if you have learned anything in my class today by testing you through few test questions. Are you ready? Question number 1. A business owned and managed by an individual is known as A. Partnership, B. Sole proprietorship, or C. Retailer. The right answer to this question is B. Sole proprietorship. Question number 2. Which of the following is not a source of capital for a sole proprietor? A. Personal savings. B. Loans from family and friends. C. Contributions from partners. The right answer to this question is C. Contributions by partners is not a source of funds for a sole proprietor. This is where I draw the curtain in our class today. I hope by now you can define sole proprietorship, state some features of sole proprietorship, and advantages and disadvantages of sole proprietorship. Until I see you again in another interesting commerce class. Bye-bye.